We're recording and sort of live. Hi guys, it's Tiff from Productive Life, and I'm joined tonight on Booze and Blogging with my buddy Kevin.
Hello.
And we're coming to you from a wonderful location.
Undisclosed.
It's an undisclosed location somewhere in California, as if anybody doesn't know where I am. I haven't been posting on social media at all. So tonight's Booze and Blogging. I have a very special guest. My buddy Kevin, who happens to be my husband's best friend. I've known this guy for as long as I've known some of my best friends. It's a little crazy to think how long I've known you. It's kind of crazy. But I don't know, are you actually drinking something local? I'm drinking something semi-local. It's from a brewery in LA. We got this when we were, wherever we were, Golden Road. But it's pineapple and apricot. Do you say apricot or apricot?
I think it's one and the same.
Okay, there you go. It's delicious. Probably too fruity for you. What do you got going on over there?
Mine is quasi-local as well. It's from Northern California, and it's a Thelonious Monk-inspired Abbey ale. It's a bizarre thing, but it's Belgian-style Abbey.
And he got a fancy new mug to drink out of just for this occasion. Look at this thing. I almost ended up with one myself last night because I couldn't say 9 ounces. The 9 sounded like Stein, and I almost ended up with one myself.
Well, I said Stein, and I meant it. So here's my stuff.
All right, so tonight's topic is going back to a mental health discussion. Kev has been working in and around the world of, what would you like to say?
I work in mental health.
Mental health. And have for quite a while, your whole career.
My whole professional career. I was a PE teacher. That did not count as mental health. Well, maybe in some cases it did. But when people ask me what I do, I say I'm in mental health, or I tell them I'm a therapist. And they usually say, oh, you mean like a physical therapist? No. But I work as an MFT, a marriage family therapist, and my disclaimer is I'm not a practicing therapist, but I am a licensed clinician. So that I can say with certainty.
Absolutely. And Kevin's been through a lot of my struggles, and he is a great sounding board, not only for me, but for Brian as well, with the various mental struggles. I will be perfectly honest to say, you guys know that I share a lot about my struggles with depression and anxiety and how that has impacted me personally as well as my family, and what I'm doing to try my best to continue to manage that. And as I've shared before, and Kev joins a lot of my blogs, so he has to, verify what I'm saying is true. I, am a very big believer in working with a therapist, somebody that has a lot of experience in specialty working with mental health. I can't say that I think that all therapists are created equal. Everybody, I think there's a lot of specialties.
For sure.
So I think that if you are in a situation where you are working through any form of mental illness, it's really important to get some support and some expertise and find the right person for you if therapy is around that you choose. And so we're going to talk about just, he's followed my journey for a very long time, and I think he's going to be able to give us a very good perspective on therapy as a whole.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, when people hear that, I hope they don't misunderstand that in no way, shape, or form have I ever been her therapist. I am her friend first. And I think a lot of people sometimes confuse therapy for friendship or friendship for therapy, and sometimes the borders can bleed a little, and that could be dangerous. I'll say that.
Sure, absolutely.
I see that in my line of work sometimes.
Yeah. So as you've watched what I've gone through and you hear me share, what are some things that you feel like are kind of some gaps in some of the ways that I have shared about working with the therapist or managing mental health, or what are some things you would like people to be more aware of?
Okay, well, I don't know about your gaps specifically, but I'll say what I know as a therapist, what I've seen in working with many psychiatrists as well, is what you'll notice is that a lot of people will be depressed or have some sort of mental health issue, and they'll go to a primary care physician or a doctor, some sort of even a psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
And a psychiatrist will prescribe meds, or an MD will prescribe meds, like primary care type doctor will prescribe meds, and then they'll neglect the actual therapy part. Now, of course, that's coming from a therapist, right? Don't neglect your therapy. But the important part for me, I work with my hands a lot. I'm the friend of Tiffany who does the woodworking periodically. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense in my mind to think of it kind of like you're building a house. So there's structure to it. And your primary care physician can be sort of the conduit between all the different pieces, right? So your primary care will refer you to a therapist, who will also refer you to a psychiatrist, and then he or she will take care of the physical part. And so each part is like a contractor, and you wouldn't let your electrician do your plumbing.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So why would you let a psychiatrist do your therapy, or why would you let a general practitioner do your meds?
Yeah.
So each place has its own little,
absolutely,
its own little specialty, I think.
Okay.
To me, that's important.
That is important. So can you explain a little bit between, you're saying therapist and psychiatrist, not same
right.
necessarily.
They can be. No, they can do the same.
Okay. But how would you different, in this situation, to me, you're describing them separately.
They can, yeah. Generally speaking, I think what you're going to notice is most psychiatrists can do therapy, but most psychiatrists aren't excellent at therapy. And so you'll find contractors who go, oh yeah, I do my own drywall, but I don't do any of the electrician stuff. And some people can do that, but some people shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
There are plenty of psychiatrists out there who, by the way, do an excellent job with that. And so don't sell them short. But if you find an excellent psychiatrist who works well in a group with other therapists, that can sometimes be more effective.
Okay. That's good information. Yeah. So if you and I didn't know each other,
okay,
but I discovered that you were a therapist and I came to you and, not maybe just in general fashion, just for some advice on where would I start if I felt like I was in a situation where I felt like I was to a point where I needed to just try to figure out how to get some help to deal with what I'm dealing with. Where would I start?
All right. So the first rule of therapists is you should never give advice. And as a friend, I would give you advice, but if I were to do therapy with you, if you were not my friend, I would probably be doing a disservice to be giving you advice.
Okay.
So what I would suggest as a therapist and as a friend is if you ever felt like you had a need for therapy, and if you ever felt like you were going to see a doctor and get medication, or even if you were on medication but were not in therapy, definitely seek out a therapist who you just feel comfortable with. You're going to hear a lot of people say things like, oh, I'm Reichian, and I'm, I work in all kinds of, I'm Jungian.
Okay. These are things I need to look up?
No, these are things you should never look up.
Oh, well,
please don't give it any kind of meaning
or
any. Sit down with a therapist and I think interview them. Even if you're just calling them one on the phone and saying, do I feel comfortable with you? And then we have a 15-minute consultation with you before our initial session.
Okay.
Something like that. If you feel comfortable with the therapist, that to me is more important than whatever type of therapy they're going to bring to the table. To me, that's more important than anything.
Okay. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're getting ready to
spill
everything to try to really work through
that's correct.
Deep stuff. And if you don't feel comfortable, I guess I had never thought about that, because I feel like if I've been referred or I've asked for therapy as an option over medication, here's who you should go see. And it's almost like you don't have a choice though. Like, I don't know that I've ever thought about calling in advance to try to set up consultation time for trying to meet with somebody. So
you can do that, and people don't know that.
Okay.
There will be some restrictions based on your insurance or based on your EAP or how many visits. So I would take advantage of that if at all possible. But again, if you're in a group, if you have a doctor who's referred you to a psychiatrist and this psychiatrist says, I work in a group, here are the therapists that I work with in this group, try to pick one because they'll work better together.
Okay.
That to me is as important because
Okay.
they'll talk to each other.
Gotcha.
And you should know that.
Well, and you want to hope that they're actually talking.
Yes, you do. Now, if you can find a psychiatrist who is established and does a very good job of doing actual therapy, actual one-to-one therapy, all the better. I mean, you can get both done in one shot, and that's great. But if you can't, or if it's just not, you're not going to see your psychiatrist more than once a month, which is pretty usual nowadays in therapy with different things with insurance problems and things like that. See your therapist once a week, see your psychiatrist once a month, and you can get away with that just fine. But I would caution people against getting psychiatry without the therapy, because it can, you hear all those advertisements on the radio or on the TV, and they're like, may cause, laundry list of symptoms.
Yes, yeah.
The most important one that they sort of gloss over in the legalese is some of these antidepressants have activating properties. And so what that means is some people will have been so depressed for so long, they just don't have the energy to get up and do anything. And then once they take this pill that kind of gets them moving a little and gets their juices flowing a little, it's not that it activates something in your brain that goes, oh, no, I'm suicidal, but it gets you like, oh, I'm off the couch. Now I was going to do what I couldn't do before, and that may have been thinking about suicide or doing something, self-harming or something.
Yeah.
So they have activating properties. It doesn't mean that it's going to cause you to be suicidal, but the psychiatry without the psychology can be dangerous. It will be.
Okay.
So I would caution people against leaving that portion out.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've ever thought about it like that when I've heard a warning of some sort, like how that's actually impacting you.
The rectal bleeding takes the...
Yeah, exactly. That kind of like takes a precedence over all other warnings. What? Interesting. So in your profession and just kind of how mental illness is viewed in our lovely world of social and everything else, do you feel that mental illness is getting, better support, better recognition for what it is? Do you still think it's pretty taboo? Like, where do you think mental illness fits in?
It's definitely not taboo anymore, I don't think. I think people are starting to see that there's a place for it in the world. And if possible. If anything, it's starting to swing the other way. I think people are starting to take some sort of ownership of it, for good or for bad. I think some people take it maybe a little too much as their identity. So it can be part of a balanced breakfast, part of a healthy diet, if you will, if we're talking about fit, active life, right?
Yeah.
So part of a healthy diet would be getting out there and having a hobby, keeping busy. I mean, for me, that's my therapy. I don't do personal therapy, but I do have a hobby that becomes my therapy. And I try to make sure that it doesn't overwhelm my personal life too much or become too much of a business, because I do sell some of my therapy. My wood projects and things like that. So what I would caution again is that you don't want it to become too much of an identity. People take a little bit too much ownership of it. I have a support dog, and now this is my identity, and I can't go anywhere without it.
Yeah.
A lot of that can become a little too much.
Too much. Yeah.
Well, people,
but it can be coping for some people.
It can be, yes.
Depending on where they're at. And I think
to me, it's like ADD has become, what was ADD is now emotional support. It's far more overly diagnosed than it should be.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, and I get your point about the hobby and the therapy aspect, because that is kind of what broke me out of my really bad depression was just, for me, my therapy became just exercising and self-care again. And I'd gotten a long way away from that. And it was, not on purpose. It was just how life had kind of gone for a few years. And you don't really realize, and maybe it's partly identity driven. I think that a part of my identity for so long was being active, being an athlete. Like that was just always a part of me or my story. And then it really went away. And then I kind of lost myself and not really knowing, like, okay, am I just a career person now? Am I mom and wife? Like that aspect. And I think that for me, getting back into just having a good physical routine to help me have more mental clarity, to help me just relieve stress, whatever that was, it was building up to cause me to have that, my depression and anxiety. It's a great hobby. Physical activity is a great hobby to have. Not only is it good for you physically, it's good for you, mentally, it's good for you emotionally. It releases chemicals in your body that are just invaluable. Those are the same chemicals you're getting in some of these antidepressants and things like that. So it's definitely one of the better hobbies. Whatever you can do to get, if you have a hobby, whatever it is, for me, it's something linear. So I've got this woodworking hobby that I have, and there's a start and finish to every project that I have. And to me, it just helps slow my brain down because I don't know if you can relate, your brain go a mile a minute kind of a thing. So it'll help slow me down a lot. And each piece of the project has a purpose. And if you skip over a purpose, you're really going to see it in the end, or it'll be very outrageously visible. Yeah. And a lot of it for me is problem solving too, because I think some of the more masterful woodworkers are not who knows the most, not who has the best skills, but really who covers their mistakes the best, and you can't notice it. So things will explode on you on the lathe, and you got to figure out how to cover it up, or how to make it almost look like you meant to do it. Yeah. Right. Intentional mistakes. Right. How about that? Well. Yeah. Okay. Well, and I think that really the point here is that, finding a way to channel good energy and give yourself some element of that release, or just a way to kind of focus differently, or get your mind into a different place, or a better place, or whatever that works for you. For me, it's exercise. For you, it's woodworking. For other people, it's cooking. I have that therapy mode too. I love to, but for other people, it might be community service, or just doing something that helps you give some element of yourself and channel your energy in a way that you feel productive or constructive, or just a nice release of good emotion. And I think there's no wrong answers in that. No, I don't either. You find what works. Find what works for you. I have a friend who does crossword puzzles. I like the Sudokus. I mean, whatever gets your brain to kind of slow down and think about steps intentionally. These are, I think, really important things for people. My wife's doing the yoga recently. Oh yeah. Slow down. Awesome. Everything is just kind of slow down. Totally. Intentional steps. Be very, mindful is a popular term right now. Yeah. Well, and I think that slowing down element is big. We're all in a hurry to do everything, or get our kids to do everything, and it's really hard to just take a step back, because the days gone by, and before you know it, you feel like you haven't done anything for yourself or accomplished half of what you wanted to do. And in reality, you've gotten a ton done, and you've been very accomplished in your day, but sometimes it doesn't always feel like that, to the point where it makes you more stressed and more bogged down, so to speak. Well, I have a pretty interesting question for you. Because my hobby has turned into a business. It's a side business, and I do it with a friend of mine. I'm not going to plug it. You can plug it later if you want. But the point of the business is still self-therapy for us. And we kind of had this conversation ahead of time. We said, this will not turn into a legitimate business, because if it does, then it feels like work. And if it's work, then it's not therapy. And we want to share this with people, and we want to sell our items
least my wife wants me to sell them and get them out of the house and make a couple bucks. But if this becomes work, then all of a sudden it's not therapy anymore. And how do you balance that? Because I know that this is work, but has it become no longer therapy or will it get to that point? How do you prevent it from getting to that point? Because I get these phone calls like, hey, I need 20 pens by Friday. I can't.
On Tuesday.
I can't fucking do that. I'm sorry for my language, but I can't.
We cuss on this show.
So, right. Well, okay. So how can I prevent it from becoming a job and no longer my therapy?
Well, you have to remain in control, and you have to set the boundary. And it's tough because you get excited because you're like, okay, sweet, I would love to make and earn something off of making 20 pens. Right. And I have definitely gone like full circle, I feel, in some ways. I've been doing this for 3 years. Now it's been 4 years since I had my big meltdown and really kind of took back control of where I was in my life. And I decided to have this, as to your point, side business, because I felt like what I gained back was too valuable not to pay forward to anybody else who might be experiencing something like I was experiencing. And I've gone through that where, it's been awesome. And there's, a ton of people that want to join health and fitness groups, want to work on, whatever it is. And to me, it's awesome because I'm like, okay, it's just so many more people that want to do something great for themselves in their lives. And I want to be a part of that and I want to help them. But this is not my full-time job. Would I love to do it full-time? Yeah, probably to an extent where I would still feel like I was in control. The only way I could ever see doing this in a full-time realm is if I knew that not working in a full-time career where I feel like I am able to really contribute to the company that I'm working for, like it is what I want to do from a career standpoint. If this was my career, I would have to really set boundaries that are hard for me to set in this business, because it's hard to say no. It is hard to have firm business hours because you're getting a text or you're getting a Facebook message or whatever. And I think it would take a lot of discipline. And I've done that where it's like, go, go, go. And Brian's like, you work this job more than you work your job that's,
paying the bills,
paying the
putting
bills.
food on the table.
Yeah. And
flying you out to Carlsbad.
Absolutely. But at the same time, I have to like control my guilt in a way, because I don't want to let other people down who I know are working really hard to maybe either overcome something like what I was once experiencing or just want to be better role models for their kids or whatever that might look like. And so I think that the element of not letting it slip away is to try to set some boundaries and to not feel bad if you have to say, no, I need 3 extra days to do what you're asking for. Or in my situation, if I don't return somebody's phone call or message, I just at least let them know, hey, I will get back to you by X, so that there is still an expectation, but I'm not stressed out about, oh my gosh, you didn't help this person or get back to them or whatever that might look like. And I think that the communication aspect is all that people are really looking for. Right. Communication is so bad in so many other elements of our careers or our personal life that if they just feel acknowledged and they feel like you're open and honest with them about what service you're providing or the timeline or what you can truly provide, then they feel great and they're willing to, sure, work with you a couple days on this job, or yes, get back to me when you
I felt that guilt too. I mean, going away on a craft fair for the entire weekend, being virtually unavailable, I don't like spending that time away from my kids, but at the same time, I think that's part of my therapy as well. Being able to have a few moments away sometimes is sometimes nice, but but I'd like to be spending that time with my kids too.
Yeah. Well, but I also think that you have a craft and a skill that you will be able to share with your boys.
Right.
And I think that could eventually be something very cool that you guys could do together.
Sure, we've done
and that. Yeah, I mean, and I think that would be a very interesting element of your personal therapy, is that teaching aspect, right? So you do it personally as well, but there's this aspect of teaching and nurturing that is so you that, you know, I'm sure that they love doing it with you. Natalie used to love working out with me, and now she says, "Oh, Mom, that's your thing. That's not really mine."
Too cool for school. Yeah, I did that with Kyle. I mean, we've made a few pens together and a couple of other odds and ends. I made that box that Nolan has.
Yeah.
But he's not really into it anymore. He's into other things, and I don't want it to be his thing if it's not his thing.
Yeah.
It's not really.
Yeah. No, I get that. Well, anything else you'd like to share, or insights you would like to give?
You know, you're going to see a lot of Facebook posts about suicide hotlines and the awareness and all that stuff. So don't ignore those. What's most important with people who become suicidal is that they probably won't tell you, and that's scarier than anything. It's scarier than the people who will cry out for help, and they're often crying out for attention, but it's the people who don't say it. So if you see a drastic change in someone's behavior, or someone, we call it baseline, see a change in somebody's base activity, or whatever their base behaviors might be around the house, how they're caring for themselves, if they're not showering as much, even it could be something very, very little. Just pay attention to that. Don't be afraid to ask them about it. Confrontation. I'm a confrontational type therapist when I was practicing. I had to, because I was working with juvenile justice kids. But to me, that made the most sense. I mean, I always confronted people straight, and headbutt them if I could, but I'd headbutt them with words.
Right. The other form might be frowned upon.
You're right.
Yeah. Okay. It's good, and I totally agree. Just thinking personally, I was very withdrawn and went from feeling, I was never really an extroverted type of person, more on the introvert side, but capable of being social. And I think that looking back, that was probably like the biggest thing that changed for me. Was it didn't matter if I was just a robot. I would get up and drop my kid off at daycare, go to work, pick her up, come home. Like, I wanted nothing to do with even my own family. I stopped doing dinners and happy hours and everything else, because I wasn't there. And so
it's like a functioning alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of, people can go through their normal daily routine, but they're really kind of not there.
Exactly.
They're not really participating.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So, don't be afraid if you see a change. And I think that was one thing that I've also kind of discovered after sharing and after kind of going through things was, well, it seemed like something was different, but we were too afraid to ask, or we didn't think you would be comfortable with us asking. And you know what, even if you asked and you get the "I'm fine" answer, just keep asking, just keep checking in, because you might hear that 50 times. Most married men will tell you fine is not fine. Fine is not fine.
That's never fine.
No, not at all. So awesome. Anything else?
No, I don't have any.
Great. Thanks for everything.
Always.
Thanks for being my audience of one. Sometimes I'm wrong, but
always.
He's the best. We'll see you guys later. Bye.